So let's get busy resetting normal. And please welcome to the screen our first panel, the impact of COVID on women and individuals of diverse background. From the other side of the world, New Zealand, and by the way, a global pace setter in how they measure GDP or a nation's well-being. They measure natural capital, social capital, human capital, and financial capital. So do check out the Treasury New Zealand Living Standards Framework. But now for Dr. Nicola Ngawati, lawyer, a former person with the New Zealand Diplomatic Corps, and working extensively now at the interface between the Crown and Maori relationship in the public sector. We're thrilled to have you. Welcome to the screen, Dr. Nicola Ngawati.
O kia ora, i ngā mana, i ngā reo, i ngā karangamaha, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. I'm greeting you, Dr. McGregor, and all the panelists in our Indigenous language of New Zealand, which is Māori. Of course, I feel right at home with the pictures of Marilyn Waring and our Prime Minister on the screen earlier. Warm greetings to you all, and a special acknowledgement to all the Indigenous people who are here today, either on the panel or listening. As Betsy said, I work at the Mana Wāhine, the Ministry for Women in New Zealand. I lead the team that's coordinating our government response to a reconciliation process in our Waitangi Tribunal to do with the rights of Māori women. But today I'm going to be touching on some of the specific impacts of COVID on our Indigenous women and girls. I could switch to the second screen slide. So what do I mean by Indigenous? I mean Māori, our Indigenous tangata whenua, or the people of the land. Wāhine, or women in New Zealand. We are diverse in the expression of our lived realities. We are mothers, sisters, daughters, or learned kuia, or elders. We are called the whare tangata, or the holders of life, as it is through us that all generations are born. We are working across all aspects of society. We succeed in pockets. You may have heard recently the government announced the first ever wahine Māori to be our next Governor General, Dame Cindy Kiro. But sadly, we are also represented in many what are called misery statistics. We are overrepresented in the prisons. We have higher rates of cancer, housing poverty, low incomes. We attain lower levels of education. And we know that over this time of COVID, Māori women have experienced the greater impact of the pandemic because the existing differences we already sustain have been exacerbated, which has led to more inequalities. We know this is especially the case in the employment area, with the predominance of wahine Māori in some of the lower skilled work areas. We were some of the first to lose our jobs. So it's been a difficult time in Aotearoa, New Zealand. If I could turn to slide 3, I just wanted to mention one of the unique responses the New Zealand government brought to the table was to have a community fund to respond to a number of the women's organisations in New Zealand who really struggled during COVID to find enough money to support women and girls in the community. So basically, this was a response because women's needs weren't being met by the core funding packages. So women could apply for a one-off grant to help their organisation to still be able to deliver services out in the community through COVID. I've given you a few examples here, the wonderful photo of the young girls from Taitokoro or in the Northland, which enabled those young women of Māori descent to be able to hold traditional wānanga or meetings to promote their own health and well-being using traditional Māori methodologies and cultural practices. all part of building their resilience to COVID, and also, of course, the wider discrimination and social inequities they continue to face in their daily reality. Next slide, please. There's a couple of other funding examples. I love the photo and the joy on the left. This is another group of our rangatahi wahine, or young women in the South Island, who were also able to receive funding to promote positive life experiences for young women to learn interrelationship skills, to build their self-esteem, which is so important when we know that Indigenous communities are also suffering higher rates of mental health issues, addiction, and suicide rates. The last one is a group of slightly older wahine who were able to run their own tikanga program, which is a cultural safe learning space where we can pass on our cultural knowledge to each other to build our cultural identity to make us all stronger. So those are some examples of the slides.
Thank you, Nicola.
Thank you.
I'm thrilled that New Zealand has kicked off our panel. Merci